Hey everybody. What I want to do here is talk a little bit about objects and keys. This is the last one that we had up here. Let's actually just create a new JS bin here. I don't need the output. I'm just going to use the JavaScript. So go to our console, so we don't get a lot of noise here. Let's say we have this object, food. It's just an object literal. And let's give it a value of bar. And we'll say that bar equals 42. Right? The plain old object literal. Let's say that we had this object that we wanted to, iterate over its keys. This is something we sort of looked at in another video. But again, the object method has this keys property, and I could pass it an object. And this actually gives me, if I go look at this, gives me an array of keys. And I can actually prove that it's an array by using the array method. And this is just going to be a collection, an array of strings, right? So if I wanted to do that, I could loop over the keys of my object and do anything that I wanted to. I mean, this is a way of sort of, if I wanted to sort of discover information about an object, I could loop over I equals 0, I less than keys dot length, I plus plus. And so now I've got a key, which is going to be keys I. You can do this in one step if you wanted to. Okay? And I could go over here and I could say console.log foo key, right? And this should print out 42. And if I had another property, Baz, and Baz was, let's say, true, right? I would basically be iterating over my object. So that's fine, and that works out great. Let's modify things slightly. Let's say that instead of having a foo, we're going to create a person constructor, and let's say a person constructor, let's make it kind of silly here, has a foo and a bar, and this dot foo equals foo. Obviously, a person would probably be the first name and the last name. This dot bar equals bar. And we'll go over here and I'll say foo equals new person, and let's make foo 42, and we'll make bar true. Okay? So now the same way that you can iterate over any object, a person is an object, and a person is going to have keys and values. And if I go to run this, I get 42 with true, just in case you thought this was like from the last thing we looked at, and I could run it again, and we could see that this ends up updating. So one of the things that you could also do, nothing would prevent us from having some method say hi, which is going to be a function. And for now, I'll say and we'll just print out this dot foo. Let's not confuse things too much. Let's say bar. Not that we're really using it, but if I was to say console.log, I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to just say, hey, look, foo, say hi. Right? So saying hello true, because that's the value for bar over here. So something is a little weird here. One of the things that's a little bit weird is that when I iterate over it, it actually is iterating over this say hi. Now, that could be what you want it to do, but more than likely, you can end up putting this on the prototype. Again, because there's no reason why two different people should have separate methods. So I could say person.prototype say hi equals, I'll go over here, and pass that function down here, and I'll get rid of this one here. Right? So if I go to run this, let's take a look. Say hi. I think I've got an extra brace there. So I've got 43 and true, and it doesn't end up looping over say hi, but there's nothing that would prevent you from putting on a prototype. You can do this, so the prototype object is holding on to something. If I go and run this, let's just see what happens here. My keys are foo and my keys are bar. And one thing that I'm sort of looking to do is to some expectation here that it would end up also trying to grab this prototype from person, which it's not doing. It's kind of interesting. Let's just see one other thing here. If I take a look at my object and I say, so here's my foo, and I say console.log foo has own property. And we'll say, hey, look, foo, do you have your own property bar? Let's get rid of some of this other noise here. All right, tells us it's got its own property bar. We could say, do you have your own property? Boom. We get back true again. But we could also ask, does foo have its own property? Say hi. We end up getting false. Now, just to sort of make sure that we realize that if we were to go and do this, again, this doesn't make a lot of sense, but if we did end up putting this directly on the person object, right, this would end up giving us true. So an object can have properties, again, exactly why it's not showing up with all the keys, I really sort of have to take a look at. But the key thing is that if you do have a property, you always have the ability to say, hey, look, is it your property, or is it basically something farther up the prototype chain? And you can end up doing that by looking at an object and giving it a string and saying, does it have its own property? So here, let's take this back here, and we'll bring this over to false. The only thing that I am a little bit confused about here is in this case, I would have expected maybe to have some additional keys here, right? Because we do know that if we say console.log, let's say foo.baz. Right? So foo.baz, it actually has value, but if we were to say console.log foo has own property, Baz, that should end up telling us false, right? Because it's not its own property, it's a property that's farther up the chain. So the big takeaway here is that whenever you have an object, whether it's an object that's created by a constructor or whether or not it's basically just an object literal, you always have the ability to, what I would say is query the object by basically getting its keys and looping over the keys in the object. I guess one other thing that you could do, which I don't do too often, but let me get rid of some of these other console logs. Here's another way to sort of loop over an object, and maybe this would make some sense. That's doing a for in loop. So you could say var I in, and we could say info. And if we did that and we look at console.log I, right? So this is actually where, I guess object.keys only gives us our own keys. So we don't really have to worry about it. But if we were going to do the I in the object, then if we wanted to basically only look at the properties that were ours and not in our prototype chain, we could end up saying if foo has own property I, then let's console log it. Let's make sure that that works. So I think I've got an extra, so I saw this. Try that out. So here we can see that if we did use the, so object.keys is kind of nice because it actually just gives us our own properties. But if we do I in, we're going to end up getting all the properties of the prototype chain, and we have the ability to filter them out.